Can y'all hear me this morning? So, yeah, this is kind of two presentations wrapped up in one. Ince and Laura invited me to come and do you want to come and talk at this festival? And I was like, hey, that sounds great. I pitched it to work. They were like, yeah, we approve. We'll cover your flights. We'll cover your hotel. And then they reached back out and said, hey, could you inspire us with something? And I'm like, that's great. I sort of already got this approved from work, and they really want me to talk at your event, so I kind of need to give two talks now. How did I get on the hook for this? I'm super excited to be here. I think you're all happy to be here as well. And I'm going to start with just some basic stuff on networking and meeting people and stuff that I have sort of spoken about when mentoring various groups. A lot of this is very basic, but at the same time, I'm often surprised at how other mentors at these events will go, wow, that was an interesting point you brought up, or that was really inspiring to me, or that was something I didn't really know before. Some of it's a little bit unorthodox, and so we'll go from there. There we go. So I'm the Director of Developer Relations in Europe for Genvid Technologies. I'm also on the board of the IGDA, the International Game Developers Association, and that's probably why these guys reached out to me. I have worked in sort of product management and production. These are some of the more famous companies that I've worked for on the left. And I'm really keen to give back to the community. Like I said, I'm on the board of the IGDA, board member for the Finnish Game Jam, working for an organization called For Good Games. And this is a company that makes games, but they're working with charities. My undergraduate degree was in environmental studies, and we were looking at sort of environmental studies and mass media, and how do we get that sort of environmental message out to people? And I'm looking at games as sort of a new modern way to reach messaging people through games. I'm also creating a special interest group through the IGDA that's looking to do impact and awareness through games. These are my gaming credentials, a little more human credentials about me. I moved to St. Petersburg, Russia when I graduated from university because I wanted to do something different. And I just did journalism, some charity work, freelance work, and somehow ended up in IT. Did technical writing, really boring. The company I was working for went bankrupt. Ended up at a voice over IP company. They had a billing system that was illegally hacked on top of PayPal, but it's Russia, all things go. But this was my first opportunity to manage some Ukrainian developers to build a new system to replace that. Eventually, I ended up doing more technical writing at a company called Jetbrains. They make software for developers. Pretty much every job I have had since, we have used tools that were developed at that company. I did a lot of freelance translation, and then I randomly ended up in the games industry because people reached out to me and said, hey, can you translate our games from Russian into English? I'm like, yes, I can. And basically, I adapted those translations for the Western market. If there was something that was kind of maybe slightly racist or definitely sexist, I took all that stuff out. Some of the art might not have been so good for a Western audience, and I tried to convince them to change it. Sometimes I'd win, sometimes I'd lose. But ultimately, the publishing partners were super happy with my translations because ultimately it resulted in more sales. And these guys, after doing a couple projects freelance, they started inviting me to parties, and eventually they were trying to recruit me to leave this amazing Jetbrains company where they fed me 2 meals a day, and I worked with probably the smartest people I've ever worked with in my life, to join 15 other guys and work in a kind of crappy apartment in St. Petersburg with a broken toilet. But there was something about these guys, there was something about the product, there was something about the vision that they had that for me was very inspiring. And I thought, just looking at them, they didn't even have a repository system. There were so many best practices in software development that I had learned in previous jobs that these guys weren't using, that I said I can do far more than just translate games. So I translated from Russian to English. I started managing localization into a variety of languages through partners and other organizations. I got involved in partner relations and renegotiated some contracts. I started doing a lot of competitor analysis and looking at various games and what feature sets different games had and how our games didn't have those and how we could do better in the marketplace. And I started managing teams. And from there, ultimately, I sort of had a falling out with people over time. It had been 5 years, and got a gig at Rovio, and I moved to Finland. In general, I'm a lucky person. I've been very lucky in my life. And I want to understand how many people here feel like they're lucky. Ooh, a lot of lucky people here. I can tell you're all lucky because you're actually here at the event in Jurmala, and hey, we're at the beach. We're pretty lucky. I want to talk a little bit about luck versus success. Um, it's very common in Russian when you're saying goodbye to somebody to wish them udachi, good luck. And for whatever reason, that really bothered me because I didn't feel that my success was based on luck. Obviously, I got lucky breaks. Obviously, I found opportunities. But I always felt that my success was determined by my hard work and determination, my grit and things. And so when people wished me udachi, luck, I would say, no, uspiechov. I'm wishing you success. Because success to me was the important thing. Eastern cultures, there are sort of three types of luck. There's a sort of heavenly or divine luck, fate, if you will. There is a human luck, kind of happy-go-lucky people. That's sort of determined by our behaviors and our actions. And there's an earth luck, which is feng shui. And I just really thought that like it was maybe my ability to network that generated all of this luck. And so I came across this study, this experiment this summer that actually really inspired me. This guy, Richard Wiseman, he's a PhD in the UK. And he created this experiment to sort of study the people who consider themselves lucky versus those people who are not lucky. And so he basically had people self-select. Do you feel lucky? You're in this group over here. Do you feel unlucky? You're in this group over here. And then he gave them a newspaper. Big Sunday newspaper, lots of photographs, lots of pages. And he said, count the number of photographs in these newspaper. And the unlucky group took about 2 minutes to complete the task. The lucky group took about 15, 30 seconds to complete the task. Has anybody heard of this study? And so the remarkable thing is, how did that happen? How did the lucky people manage to count all the photographs in such a short amount of time? There were hidden messages in that newspaper. In rather big print, about 2 inches, like 5 centimeters tall, there was a sign on page 2 that said, there are 43 photographs in this newspaper. Stop counting. Write 43 on your paper. Turn it in. You're done. He goes a little bit further, and this is kind of to control things because all lucky people might be looking for more information. So further in, maybe 5 or 6 pages in, there's another big sign that says, you could win 250 pounds. Write 250 pounds on your sheets and call one of the experimenters over to say, hey, I noticed this. To me, this was just super surprising that, these are the results of this test. And what it comes down to is that luck is a mindset. So this was mind-blowing for me. Like I discovered this summer, luck is actually a mindset. It's mindsets are important. We've been talking a lot about mindsets in the industry. We were talking about how it's important for people to look at challenges, rise up to these challenges, not be discouraged by them, but they're opportunities to grow. How important it is that we have a growth mindset. And it seems that people who are lucky, they're constantly looking for more information. They're constantly looking for more opportunities. Unlucky people, for whatever reason, maybe they're nervous, maybe they're anxious about a test, but they, for whatever reason, have the blinders on it. They're so focused on what they're doing that they miss information that is right in front of them in 5 centimeter size text. And that for me is, well, it's just really astonishing, to be honest. Just as an example, my boss asked me, he's like, we need to enter this post-COVID mindset. As soon as you're ready to travel, I want you to go to LA. I want you to meet the people that you've been working with online for the last year and a half. And the first thing I did when he said like, hey, you're gonna go to LA, okay, here's when I'm getting my second vaccine, here's 2 weeks after my second vaccine, this is when I can fly in. I'm looking at IGDA meetup groups around LA. I'm looking at events all over the States. I'm pitching all sorts of crazy ideas. That you're gonna go to LA trip turned into, I'm flying into New York, I'm gonna take vacation to see my mom, I'm meeting people in LA, I'm going up to Seattle, and I flew back. Partially because I'm just looking for opportunities, partially because of the mindset that I have, partially because my boss is a pretty cool guy. The good news here, not that they're unlucky people here, but the good news here is that Wiseman actually created a luck school. because he realized that this is a mindset, that if he can get unlucky people to begin to behave and adopt the behaviors of lucky people, that he could actually change their luck. Again, just surprising. Here's an inspirational quote. I'm going to try to sort of break everything up with some inspirational quotes so you can sort of take that set in. And then I'll move gears and talk a little bit about networking. And I don't know like who you are. I mean, when I look at this picture, I picture myself maybe the guy in the green off to the left, or maybe the guy in red. I'm pretty much introverted. I get very awkward at networking events. But when we go to a party or we go to an event, we're looking to get lucky. We're looking to meet people. We're looking to have some sort of state change, have some sort of opportunity come our way. That's why we're all lucky, because we're all here. We're looking to make that happen. This is a physical event, and the amount of luck that we can have at a physical event is just so different from all this online stuff that we've been dealing with for the last year and a half. You know, I'm going through profiles, and it's almost like dating. Like, okay, this person's not a match for what I'm doing, this person's not a match for what I'm doing, this person's not a match for what I'm doing. And it's frustrating, because I know if I'm at an event, I'm gonna meet a whole bunch of people I wasn't planning on meeting. I'm gonna have coffee with people. There are gonna be opportunities to talk about people. And I'm gonna hear about stuff that has zero interest in what I'm doing with IGDA or what I'm doing with my work, but it's gonna be interesting to me. And I'm gonna be like, hey, I know a guy that could use your thing. And that's the kind of luck and that's the kind of magic that happens at these events, and that's why we're here. I'm gonna talk a little bit about introversion and extroversion. Introverts, how many introverts here? Wow, a lot of introverts. Extroverts? Yeah, there we go. Cultural differences. I'm an American, I live in Finland. That makes any introverted American extroverted. I honestly, I think it's a huge gift that I moved to Finland, because I'm way more outspoken in Finland than I would be in like any other country. Actually, I'm an amnivert. When I take those Myers-Briggs tests, I constantly and consistently test between introvert and extrovert. And I really began to think about that over the summer. Why is it that sometimes I'm extroverted and outspoken? And why is it sometimes I'm introverted? And I sort of had this epiphany. And it really comes down to psychological safety. When I'm with my friends, when I'm at an IGDA gathering, when I know a lot of people who know me, trust me, love me, I feel safe. I can stand up in front of a group of people, even though this terrifies the crap out of me. I can be up here doing this because I have friends in the audience. I have people that support me. I know Ince will care about me and say, hey man, this was great. Thank you for doing that. That I could totally crash and burn up here and that's gonna be okay. It's just so important, this sense of psychological safety, and it's something that I've been really looking at work. Because there are lots of times when I'm in meetings or planning sessions and I don't feel confident to talk about stuff with my colleagues. It was surprising to me at IGDA meetings where I had met people and I had sort of developed myself and I knew all those people. I could talk about anything. I could really be outspoken. I should say, hey, we should do this. But at meetings at Rovio or meetings at other companies, gosh, these people control my career. These people could, give me a bad recommendation. Something bad could happen with these people. It was a little scary for me at times. And I just realized that it's super important, particularly if you're a manager and you're managing people, to put people in a place where they are psychologically safe, where they feel that they can give input, where they feel that they are not threatened in any way, where any feedback that you give them is not an attack. A lot of bosses have told me in the past that I need to be more outgoing and I need to be more extroverted. They've seen me do this at parties, they've seen me do this at sort of company outings, they've seen me do this when I've had 3 or more beers. Why can't I do that in the meeting? And I never knew what to answer. I was like, yeah, you're right, I should be more like you. And what I should have told them is, I need you to make me feel comfortable and secure in this meeting room. I need you to listen to me in a one-on-one session and then take whatever idea I gave you in a one-on-one session, and then when we have the big meeting room, said, oh yeah, by the way, Hamilton had this great idea. And that gives me some credibility, and that gives me a little more courage to talk out in some of those meetings. Also, going back to luck, the whole IGDA thing was a total chance luck sort of thing. Originally, when I was living in St. Petersburg, I went to Slush, went to an IGDA meetup thing. I was like, oh my God, this is great. Said, hey everybody, I've been tasked with writing 5 blog posts for my company. So now I'm sort of like crazy journalist from Russia, and met a bunch of people, and I just sort of got in this IGDA meeting handed on from one person to another person. Oh, you should talk to this person and this person. And one drunken IGDA evening, I had like 7 blog posts. My work for the week was done. It was kind of amazing. I could enjoy Slush. And when I was looking to move on from Nevasoft, to move on from St. Petersburg, I was sort of debating between going to Seattle or going to Helsinki. And ultimately, I chose Helsinki because of that IGDA meeting. There was something about the community. There was something about how the people were giving. There was something about how people were helpful. And so I was all excited. I'm going to go to this IGDA meeting. And now I'm just a guy from Rovio. And there are like 300 people in this meeting because we have a lot of people in Helsinki. Like Helsinki is amazing because it has like this huge development community. And I'm like, I don't know anybody here. And I was that guy, the red guy on the edge, maybe the other guy that's not even looking at the party. I was really scared. I wouldn't say scared, just nervous, like how do I introduce myself? People are talking in Finnish, I'm just gonna drink my beer here quietly. And probably 2 or 3 meetings in, Yuri, who was chair of the organization, stood up on the stage after a speaker and said, hey, by the way, we're looking for volunteers. We need somebody to lead the Helsinki organization, and we're looking for help organizing seminars. And I was like, yeah, that's probably something I can do. And so, you know, they say networking is the most effective way to get jobs, freelance opportunities, and building long-term relationships with people. And I say volunteering is one of the best ways to network. You can establish trust with your peers, you can boost your profile, establish trust with people. You can build your personal brand, establish credibilities. Most organizations need volunteers. I'm sure the Latvian Game Developers Association here could use some volunteers. I think, you know, the more you give, the more you end up getting in return. And I'll point out that there are a lot of things that you can do behind the scenes that don't require you to stand up in front of people or introduce speakers. You can help sign people in, you can help set things up, you can help break things down and clean up. There's probably social media posts that can happen. Volunteering doesn't have to be limited to something local. You can volunteer for big events, like, you know, one could volunteer for this conference and come and probably get a free ticket. If you're thinking of coming to Helsinki, you want to go to Slush, very expensive tickets. I volunteered, I got a free ticket. Not only did I get a free ticket, I got access to a VIP area as sort of crew. And even when I was working, I got to network with some people I wouldn't have been able to network with had I not had that free volunteer ticket. Game jams, another great way to network. And I will often point this out because I've met so many people that think game jams are only for people that are artists or developers. What could I possibly do as a producer or somebody with a marketing background? And the answer is, you can learn to communicate more effectively. As a producer working at a variety of different companies, I knew the people on my team. I sort of over time understood how they tick. I sort of knew who needed a kick in the butt, who needed encouragement, the process was already organized. This is an opportunity. You've got new people, you don't know how they are, you don't know how they tick. You have 48 hours to figure that out. You have 48 hours to figure out and develop processes and maybe change how you've done processes in the past. Maybe there's a new project management tool that you want to try out, and this gives you a chance to experiment with that. Really, game jams are for everybody. Why network? There are a lot of good reasons. A lot of them are listed here. But I think it's inspiration. It's community. We all seek connection. We all seek acceptance. And without all these things, I don't think there's any way I would survive winter in Finland, to be honest. It's so dark. It's really about community. Another inspirational quote as I shift gears. I think it's important to remember that there are a lot of people that may not seem important today. You don't know where they're going to be in 5 years or 10 years or 15 years. I have met people even before I got into games or very early on in my career that are CEOs and leading huge billion-dollar companies that are managing projects. And I'm just often surprised how people will think of me years later and say, hey, we have the perfect job for you. Are you ready to jump to that next thing? It's amazing. And I'm very grateful. Next, I'm going to talk about change makers and archetypes. Malcolm Gladwell, in his book, The Tipping Point, puts change makers into 3 categories. And I find this interesting. I think it's very important that as we're networking, we learn to identify who these people are or who matches into these different categories. I think it's also important to make a self-assessment as to who we are. Not everybody's a change maker, but most of us sort of slot into one of these categories, and understanding who we are will help us play into our strengths when we're networking. Yeah. Mavens are ideas people. They're builders, they're engineers, they're process people, they're systems folks. When you need an expert on a particular topic, they're probably a maven. If you get lost thinking about ideas, or you say the information here is a little too thin, you're probably a maven. And they are the people who come up with typically interesting game ideas, new forms of gameplay, these types of things. Next, we've got connectors. Connectors galvanize people. They are hubs. They bring people together. They are the social glue. I know I'm a connector. I have been best man 7 times. I like meeting people. I like telling stories about people. This makes me a connector, and I've made a lot of connections with people, and I've met other people that make a lot of connections with people, and I think it's important to remind people that connectors might be not interested in your whole journey of your product or your company or your startup or your game, but they will make an invaluable connection that will help you make that next leap in what you're doing and what your development is. So don't be surprised if the connector is not there for your journey, but they'll make that invaluable connection. And then lastly, we've got salespeople, and they are the persuaders. They are the storytellers. They take an idea, they make it accessible, they make it sticky, they make it understandable. They often ask, like, have you thought about positioning this product to this particular audience? They really understand audiences, and they really understand that connection between products and audiences. It goes without saying, these are your marketing people. And then it's amazing how they can often rethink and repackage things and find sort of different ways to sell your product. Ultimately, there are no hard and fast rules to this. We're all likely a combination of these archetypes. I think it's very interesting to people watch and look at how people interact with one another at events. I find it particularly interesting when I have a good friend and they have a really good friend, but then I don't, for whatever reason, connect with that good friend. What is it about us that doesn't really jive? Or what is it about other people that don't jive? And a lot of it has to do with introverted, extroverted, what kind of, person you are. It's just very interesting, but I think it's important to keep these things in mind, kind of understand who you are and focus on your strengths as you do networking. I think a lot of times we spend too much time focusing on some of the things that we don't get so right. There have been a lot of sort of, oh, it's time for your annual review. You're really good in all these things, and here's this one thing you're crappy at. We think you should spend a lot of time getting better at that one thing that you're crappy at. Maybe. Part of me thinks it's a waste of time, and I should just play into my strengths and really bring value to the company. Again, here's another inspirational quote. And one shameless plug for Leadership Day. So IGDA Finland, we have an annual event that is Leadership Day. It is a one-day international event on how we build companies, cultures, and teams to make better games. It's 100% free. It is online. It is happening Monday. I encourage you to sign up, get a ticket. We'll send you a link. If you fail to do that, I will tell you now that is the IGDA Finland Twitch channel. There are a lot of good speakers. It's going to be fun. Please sign up. I'll close this section with some inspiration from the 2012 Olympics. We have here Abel Mutai. He's the Kenyan kind of rushing in front. And running the race, and the signage was poor. He thought he had crossed the finish line, but he hadn't. And he had been winning the race practically the whole race from the start. And coming up behind him is this Spanish guy, and he's screaming at him in Spanish because he realizes that he hasn't finished the line. And running behind him, and he kind of shoves this Kenyan guy over the line before he did, so that the Kenyan actually won the race. And I just find this truly inspirational. The running community is probably as tight as the game development community is. Sometimes it's difficult to do the honorable thing or the right thing, the thing that's perhaps best for the community. And when asked by journalists, he was like, "You could have won the race. Why didn't you do that?" And he was just like, "What would my mom think? There's no honor in winning this gold medal if, the guy who really deserved to win it didn't win it." And this actually reminds me of this crazy Finnish story that I wasn't sure if it was really true or if it was urban legend, but Juri, again, the guy who was the chair of the IGDA Finland when I first moved here, would tell this story about how global launch is happening. It's this town of Kotka. There are not many game development studios in Kotka. I'd never heard of Kotka, to be honest. And so global launch, featured by Apple, servers are dying, people can't play the game, total disaster, oh my God. And a competing company sent all of their server developers over to help this team out. And it took some time, it took a couple days, as I learned last night when I met people last night to tell me more about this story. But they managed to get it going, and so the whole featuring wasn't entirely lost. But again, this is, when I talk about community, this is what I mean. And when I talk about that decision to move to Finland as opposed to moving to Seattle, this is what I mean. And I believe it's possible. I don't know if it would happen in Russia or in America. I would like to believe that there are communities where this would happen. But I believe we can make it happen, and that's within us to make that happen. So that's sort of my challenge to you. When you think about community, think about the community you want to have. Think about the event you want to have. It's in our power to make this an event, an amazing event. I think we're all excited. I think we're all hungry to meet people. I'm taking meetings with people that I know there's no way I can do business with them because I want to meet people, because that's what I'm here, because I am happy to meet you. And so thank you for this. And I will move on to the next, called This Talk, sponsored by my employer, Genvid Technologies. And I'll try to run through this quickly because I know I might be a little short on time. But just a little bit about who we are. We were founded by some Square Enix veterans primarily, two great guys that are American. They lived in Tokyo for a number of years. We're a US-based startup. We have offices in New York, Montreal, LA, Tokyo, London, Berlin. I know I live in Finland. I'm technically based out of that Berlin office. They really liked me. They decided to hire me anyways. We are funded by a whole bunch of different people. You can see all the logos here. I'll point out Makers Fund and Galaxy Interactive because we have members from those funds on our board. I think most amazingly, particularly for me, because I get to meet these people, is we have truly amazing advisors. From ex-Square Enix CEO Ichiwata to digital media executives Matt Ball and Andrew Schneider, Anna Sweet, who was instrumental in building Valve and Steam into what they are today. She's also head of Bad Robot Studios and worked with J.J. Abrams. Cindy Holland, who was VP for original content at Netflix, and JT Gleason, who was at Twitch for more than 8 years in both partner and developer relations. And our mission is to power the future of interactive media. People love shared experiences, and they really love it when their participation matters, and they can have an impact on what's going on. So be it gaming, sports, or reality TV, these are the events that become those water cooler moments that people end up talking about in the office. And we're already working with top tier platforms, leagues, and events to create these experiences. And this is sort of our key thesis, that games and traditional media are at a point of convergence, that some games are addressing larger audiences. You're thinking of Fortnite or Roblox, having concerts, all sorts of things that are attracting non-gaming people to the experience. And media really wants the stickiness of games. People keep coming back to games. We're addicted to games. Both sides are trying to be interactive and increase their mass market appeal. And this is happening now, and game developers sort of should be thinking about this and think about new forms of gameplay that can happen when players and viewers can interact with one another. And I'll touch on that later. Here's an interesting chart that shows the growth of the interactive media market. And we believe the interactive media market is going to double the overall size of the game industry. And until recently, game developers didn't have a really way to reach interactive streams. Maybe they could create some clips, maybe they could get some marketing buzz out of it, and that was kind of the extent of what they could do. There was no real way for them to really engage people or monetize people directly. And we believe by offering more immersive and more interesting viewing experiences, we can do just that, and game developers can be part of both markets. So we're talking about a new type of content, with interactivity being the future of mass media content and what we call massive interactive live events, or MILES. We feel that this is the next step of that evolution. We seek to disrupt the traditional broadcast experience by offering increased involvement or influence. And it's the audience that is going to matter. Actually, I think it's this example on this slide, where picture a virtual nature documentary where you control the weather and a number of the behavior of the predators. So you're sort of watching a documentary, but then you're actually sort of poking it like a fishbowl or an ant farm or something like this. Miles combine the best of lean forward gaming, the best of lean back TV, and the thrill of live entertainment. Here the audience will matter, and each individual can decide their own level of involvement or influence. Do you want to sit back and watch it like television, or do you want to be poking the ant farm? Or do you want to be even more involved? Miles can be designed in a number of different formats and ways, combine a number of different styles, and that is really challenging for us because as a company, we made a deliberate decision to make the whole framework very vague and very flexible and very adaptable to a wide range of situations and types and game types. And as a result, it's a little difficult to package. But we believe there's an underserved market. Right now, there are more and more people that are watching live streams on Twitch or on a variety of different platforms. And historically, game developers have only been focused on the players. They create great gaming experiences and they know how to monetize them. And it's only now that developers are beginning to think about having viewers as part of this ecosystem. And that's, for me, why it's exciting to talk about this. And so, apologies for people who don't know baseball, but this really sums up my what I think we're getting on Twitch when we're watching streamers. I don't know anything about what is happening from the player perspective. I don't know who's on base. I don't know what the score is. I don't know anything that's happening. For me, this is not really compelling. And this is what you get with Twitch because it's only the player perspective. We want to help game developers go to something more like this. Game developers and not streamers are in the best position to address viewership of their games because they have the ability to put in new bird's eye cameras and create new interactive experiences that will really help the viewers understand what they're watching. Professional sports are spectator-driven businesses. And we believe that by creating a value-driven participant experience that has multiple layers of engagement, viewers can affect what they're watching, that we can create a funnel that benefits everybody in the ecosystem. And so what we're doing is new, and I think we're often confused with a lot of other things. And I think it's, can I just keep, no, it'd be bad for the online audience, I'll keep going. Yeah, what we're doing is new and often confused with what other people are doing. So I just want to explain what Genvid is not. And first and foremost, I just want to say we're not a streamer tool. I think everybody that understands that we're doing live streaming thinks of Twitch and thinks of streamers. And so often I get game developers that are like, okay, streamers, you're a streamer tool, and we're not a streamer tool. We want to empower game developers to make a viewer-centric experience that really empowers them to create new forms of gameplay and entertainment. We're also not cloud computing. You hear a lot of Stadia, you hear a lot of what a lot of big players are doing and how that doesn't really scale particularly well, how it's very challenging. We are native cloud streaming. It's a broadcast technology. We're reaching many people. We scale a lot cheaper than multiplayer servers. And then we're not a platform. We work with Twitch. We're a Twitch preferred partner. Our games are available on YouTube. We have games that are available on Facebook, and these are all different platforms. They all have different audiences, and we feel it's important for developers to choose the platform that best fits their game. And so, looking at this, players are your core demographic that developers are really focused on today, but there are a lot of opportunities in spectators or interactive viewers, and then again, just people that are watching the experience. And again, spectators benefit from having an enhanced, more enjoyable, more understandable experience that will help drive fandom into your game. And so how can we do this? Looking to the left here, we've got personalized data and cameras. Again, we really are fans of big bird's eye cameras that allow people to capture the tactics and strategy and what's happening in the game that we didn't have in that first baseball shot. We're a huge believer in interactive maps that have real-time player data. You can see players moving around. You can see how teams are interacting with one another. You can pull up leaderboards and you can pull up other data. This is all just basically HTML5 that's on top of a stream. And like the volume knob, this should be something that you can turn up, turn down, turn off, sort of set it up as you see fit. And this is true when I'm watching sort of sporting events. I'll often pull out an iPad and sort of follow data in real time. I find it interesting. Jumping to the middle, and unfortunately this was a animated GIF that didn't come out through, but you have sort of, this had some pop-ups that would say, hey, there are usually more people in this section than this other section. And so you would get an idea of the player that's jumping in. Are they going into an area where there are more people that are normally going or less people? It could be an RPG game, and it could be something like ogres have a 2-time buff during this event. Doesn't really matter. I look at this as like a re-engagement feature. If I have a powerful ogre from before, maybe I stop watching the stream and I jump in with my character. But it's important to explain to the viewers what's happening in the game. Games, unlike sports, they're constantly changing. There's constantly live operations events, and it's really important to let them know what's going on. And then finally, off to the right, and this is usually what people think about, is the actually reaching out and touching the game, where you can send a player a lifeline by giving them some health, or you can set some traps, somehow troll them. So this is just a case study. We have powered the Counter-Strike majors. Twitch was looking to make some non-advertising revenue and reached out to us to create a package for them. And basically what we offered was this, which is unfortunately another animated GIF that didn't work out properly, but you can see that there are 3 different cameras on the bottom. You have real-time data. On the sort of upper slide, you've got the yellow and the blue. This gives you real-time health of all the players, active weapons from all the players. There's a map that's pulled up here so you can see where Team Blue and Team Yellow are, how they're running around. And basically, there are 10 different player cameras that you can choose from. And this was a package that was sold to anybody that wanted to follow these tournaments, basically for $10. Rival Peak is really the first true mile where viewers actually were able to impact what was going on, and this was a big collaboration that we had with Facebook earlier this year. This is sort of a combination of a Survivor-style knockout show where every week somebody is eliminated, along with a weekly TV catch-up show. And so this was sort of the first mile, and this worked in the sense that we had 12 different AI characters that were created by a developer based in Oregon. All of those characters had their own individual streams, and as viewers participated and engaged with these characters and engaged with mini games around the characters, they were providing points for all of these AI characters, and the AI character with the least number of points at the end of the week was eliminated. And then we had Will Wheaton come in and do a weekly show, and he would talk about sort of what was going on and interview all these 12 AI characters, and it was a little insane. And that show was really more like, if the first part of this was like Big Brother and watching streams 24/7 and understanding what people are doing, this second part was more like Lost with a totally crazy conspiracy theory storyline. But it was also setting up the show for next week. It was really a lot of fun. It's still available on Facebook. In fact, if you want, there's a QR code here. You should be able to still watch it. It's currently in rerun mode. And this is just one of the characters' streams, high fidelity. Again, everything behind the sort of interface is a video stream. And then the HTML5 layer on top, you can see the 12 characters across the bottom, characters that have been eliminated to the right. And this is an event where Portia needs to get some exercise, and by engaging in an idle game, we're helping her achieve that task. There are a number of other things that you could do. There's sort of a daily vote. You know, do the contestants are going to be, the weather's going to be cold, do we send the contestants heat packs or not? And so it was really kind of a fishbowl experience, and this was what Facebook wanted. Yeah. and just quickly run through, this got a lot of press in the media, both gaming press and otherwise. And then just some basic statistics that we had tons, millions of minutes watched. We had huge growth once it finally launched. We spent the first few weeks kind of working out bugs and understanding the scalability of the whole thing. There were a number of different ways that people could engage with this, which included dialogues to help them understand what was going on. The daily votes, again, do we give people heat packs? Do we not? Do we give people food? Do we keep them hungry? And then there would be contestant goals where some of these AI characters would stand there like, what should I do next? And then basically the whole community would vote. And then the choice that had the most votes would be what the character would do. So this is truly community-driven narrative. And again, for games, there were these idle project power-up type things, match threes, memory games. Maps, because we're a firm believer in maps. Basic gamification through achievements and leaderboards. And tribute challenges where people could team up and sort of send tribute or problems or issues or good things, bad things to the contestants. This is kind of the most interesting thing in looking at the demographics. I was really surprised to see that men were more involved in this than women were. This is very casual. It really harkened to a lot of my early days in game development. I was really expecting this to be more women-centric. Also looking at the top 5 countries, US, Mexico, Brazil, India, Philippines. Interesting markets. The US wasn't even in first place because when we launched, we didn't have iOS support. Only midway through the project was this ended up being so successful that Facebook said, okay, yeah, we need to allocate some developers and make this support iOS because we're getting so many complaints from people in the States. But looking at Mexico, Brazil, India, and Philippines, when I was at Rovio, everybody was like, hey, there's a whole bunch of, there's this huge market that we can tap into if we can support all these crappy low-end Android devices that are a huge pain to support. And then at the same time, they're saying, hey, we need you to have the cool latest game so that we can get this featured by Apple. And obviously doing the newer, cooler thing was easier. We were never able to reach these audiences. And because this is basically all hosted in the cloud, we had to optimize for one Unity instance. And then it's just streaming video to all these devices. And it was hugely popular in all these areas. And so there's a huge potential here. I was also quite surprised that only 4% of people are using Facebook on PC. I guess this says I'm old. Just pointing that out. Also for a bit of inspiration, I wanted to talk about how Rival Peak started. Is basically this company in Oregon created this very robust AI system. And it was just constantly fighting each other out in these 15-minute sessions, and everybody in their office was just transfixed looking at how the AI would play out differently each time. And then we're sort of the viewing people, so they reached out to us, hey, what can we do anything with this? And so we suggested that, you know, you can let the viewer play God, because this is basically a zero-player game. It's just AI. The viewer can play God, we can let them drop things in via drone, tip the scales, it'll be kind of fun. And this is what we pitched to Facebook, and this became a multi-million-dollar project. More and more teams are getting involved in the tech, and I know the Sharp Raccoon guys are here. I don't know if they're here today. I don't know if they're in the audience. Hey. And I just, you know, these are guys that also love what we were doing. They managed to apply to the Norwegian Innovation Fund and get a $10,000 grant, or 10,000 euro grant, to explore this more, and hopefully we'll unlock more money to make a full-fledged demo for us that hopefully we can shop around. There are lots of different teams that are kind of experimenting with this and looking into adopting it. There's a company called Black Block in Helsinki that has an MMO. They're huge fans of MMO. This is a mobile-only game that is GTA, but just the cars running around creating havoc. It's a little crazy. And they love the idea of having an entry point through Twitch where people could kind of come into the game from PC and not just be mobile, even though they're making a mobile game. I've got a number of different studios that are focused on narrative design, and they like the idea of outsourcing the narrative design to creative, to the whole community, although it's much more challenging, but I think they're up for the challenge. I have another set of developers that are basically building an entire universe for 2 games that they have in mind. And they're like, oh my God, we can monetize that universe even more with this tech. Let's do an integration. I've got people in Paris that are working on a crazy competitive karaoke game with user-generated content that users will vote on. It's really kind of like Eurovision. And then there's a really good team that I love that's in Denmark that made this amazing social deduction game award-winning. They signed with the publisher. They really wanted to work with us. The publisher kept saying no, no, no. They have built a whole second game with our tech in mind and built it with a design that we need in mind from the ground up because they really love what we're doing. Part of this is because the CEO of the company came into the industry from the movie side of things. And so he is just like, oh my God, this is amazing. We need to do something. And I guess with that, we announced that we closed the Series C round of $113 million in July. And we're hiring people to make basically a whole entertainment company. I really have nothing to do with that because I'm still on the tech side of things. My heart is more with indie people that are looking to adopt this tech anyways. But where I think we can really add value to a lot of people, and particularly indies, that is helping you find creative ways to use this tech and then helping that become a pitch to investors. We have extensive investor network. We have extensive experience in raising money. We believe we can help you, our partners, raise money to sort of execute on that vision. And so can we play that video?
Somewhere deep in the woods, an evil is lurking. And everyone will be watching it unfold live.
So that's the trailer for Project Raven, which is currently a prototype, and we think it illustrates what's possible to do with Miles in the near future. It's ambitious, it's interactive, and we're going to be using a well-known IP. With that, I just want to wish everybody a great conference and good luck. And then here's some suggested reading. These are just some books where a lot of the stuff from the more inspirational session came from. If anybody has any questions about either talk or me personally or anything, I'm ready for questions.
So yeah, we have about 25 minutes for questions. So please, if anyone has any questions right now, raise your hand. Yeah.
So hi. So I've been doing my master thesis on pretty much this topic that your company is working with, and I would like to ask how do you think that viewers will influence the future of esports moving forward? Because that's where the intersection also comes to mind with like poker and stuff like that has become much more accessible in the later years because of overlays and interactive like play stats and all that. Do you think that we will see more games where the fans will basically come in and help their players out in the future of esports?
So I think if it comes to esports and it's a tournament, with the example that I was giving with CSGO, Because it's a tournament, we actually can't have the viewers impact the players in any sort of way. But what we can do is we can actually have the viewers can cheer for the players. And when they cheer for the players, there's sort of a visual representation on the map or on the screen. If we wanted to, we could pipe that sound, we could pipe cheering sound into the headsets of the players, but because it's Counter-Strike, they don't want that, so we can't do that, but if the game was different, we could. And what we're doing is we're sort of recreating that in-stadium effect. Because we want to believe that when we're in the stadium, that our screaming and our yelling has an impact on the game, that what we're doing matters, right? And that's what we're giving the viewers the opportunity to experience. So in a tournament situation, it's really going to be limited to cheering, and that's the kind of stuff that the shoutcasters will call out. And so you can build fandom around that, and you'll have fan favorite characters that will have that. In terms of the interactive gameplay, try to think of it like this. Anything that is randomly generated in your game could be outsourced to the community, and you could give it up to the community to decide, is it a 20 or is it a 1, if you're rolling a dice 20 for anything. So in terms of that level of interactivity, yes. We've thought a lot about this, and there are certain circumstances where you can leave it up to a straight vote, but at the same time, we're also very cognizant that like having a lot of voting situations, like if you have, several thousand people voting and then the vote goes one way and the vote didn't turn out the way that you wanted, it doesn't become compelling. So we're looking at, there will be some of that, but it is not going to be a total Bandersnatch type thing where you're totally jumping to a new thing. But we want it so that like your vote matters, right? And there are consequences to those outcomes. And it's kind of like you're at an event and like, do I go have coffee or do I go for a walk on the beach? And who knows what happens? I could meet somebody and sign an amazing publisher deal, or I could drown in the sea. I could meet the love of my life on the sea. I'll try not to be so negative there. But one doesn't know, but there are consequences, and you may want to go back and try to replay that, and there would be an aspect of replayability to it as well. But we believe in a lot of persistent worlds and making people wonder. It's almost like a sliding doors, if you guys are familiar with that movie, where one thing happens, but it could have been something completely different in terms of narrative design. And then there are other aspects where really you have almost like the players versus the viewers. I've got developers in Kotka, actually. And their point was our game, it's a shooter game. We have PvE, players versus environment. We've got PvP, players versus other players. And now we've got PvV, players versus viewers. And viewers could deploy different enemies and things into the game that would challenge or viewers rather would deploy different enemies and things into the game that would challenge the players.
Okay, thank you. So any additional questions? We still have time. Yes?
So you talked about monetization of the viewers. So I wondered what is that looking like? Do players vote with their money, and are these games like pay to win in a sense?
So, no. Let me talk about monetization and how things could potentially be monetized, and I'll be honest and say that Rival Peak didn't exactly prove the concept of monetization, but it proved other concepts for it with the lots of people that we had in that Facebook experience. A lot of these projects and a lot of what we're aiming to achieve with the Series C is exactly that, is monetization. Looking at the Counter-Strike example, that was monetized through a paywall. You don't get the experience unless you pay us $10. Or if it's actually the tournament organizers will collect the $10, but that's sort of how it's monetized, through a paywall. A lot of this stuff could be monetized through ads. We didn't want to do that with some of these experiences, and some of these experiences will be deliberately sort of ad-free. We see a lot of these experiences being behind a subscription paywall. Netflix has launched a whole gaming division, and they're very keen to sort of enter this space. Facebook doesn't want to lose out on that. Lots of other platforms have subscriptions, and so we see it falling into the subscription model. It could be the Counter-Strike example. You have free cheers, and then you have premium cheers that are basically a 10x multiplier on that.
and that's bought through bits on Twitch. There are a lot of things that could be bought, it could be, you could buy something, it could be some sort of arena game, and I as a user could buy something very impactful like a grenade and throw it in and see what that happens, and I might have to pay for that. Or it could be something more nuanced where I could cheer for an NPC, maybe I don't have to pay for that, but the NPC gets buffed the more people that cheer for that. And then the players like the challenge of having this buffed guy that was sort of buffed by the viewers. They might get more loot or better loot as a result. But not something that we're aiming to have as a pay-to-win type situation. But we're working with our developers. The developer is going to make the ultimate decision on that.
Okay, thank you. Any additional questions from anyone? Yes. Yeah, she raised the hand first.
Hi, Chris. Thank you for the talk. What would be your 3 top tips for indie devs who would like to tip their toes to these interactive experiences?
Tip number 1, come talk to me, let me run you through some demos, and let's go through some design thinking, because really the design thinking for this really involves thinking outside of the box. It's a new, even when I started working at the company, I was like, wow, this is cool. And I would design things and I would be like, wow, that doesn't scale. That works if there are 10 viewers, but it doesn't work if there are 10,000 viewers. And so it's thinking about different circumstances. It's thinking about the game genre. Again, the tech was deliberately left very open. So it's really open to a lot of different interpretations in terms of game design as to how this could happen. So I think going through those demos is important. And then it's kind of understanding where you are in the direction that you want to go, and can you leverage our tech in a way that really creates something that's unique and new, and that you can leverage that either through investment pitches or pitches to a publisher. It's new, it's kind of scary. A lot of publishers don't want to go that route. So if you're a developer that's really keen on publishing, maybe not the best thing, but I think we can create different opportunities for you. If you are a mobile free-to-play developer and all you think about is KPIs and increasing your KPIs, come talk to me, but I probably can't do anything for you, because you're going to go, oh, this is an SDK I need to integrate, and I'm going to push that off to the next milestone and the next milestone and the next milestone, because I can't see how you guys are going to increase my KPIs. And again, I see this is this is the blinders, this is what I'm doing. I'm not willing to sort of innovate or take a risk on something like this. And that's okay, I did that for years. I have nothing against that. My hat's off to you people, it is becoming more and more challenging. I just find this tech very exciting. So if you're the kind of person that gets excited by the opportunities that this opens up, then I would say definitely come reach out to me, talk to me, and we'll figure something out.
Okay, and where was the second question?
Hi. I wanted to ask about the tech part of the game. You said the characters were AI, and obviously the watcher chooses like what they do, but do you write your own kind of 1,000,001 version of what they could choose, or how does it like evolve?
So we teamed up with DJ2 Entertainment. These are a bunch of ex-Telltale guys that wrote the whole storyline that was sort of the lost component that was getting captured in the weekly show, the Rival Speak show with Will Wheaton. But they also created all of the dialogues within the game. And this was super challenging because the writers and Will Wheaton, nobody knew who was going to get eliminated week to week. And so they needed to create this clever system to be able to reuse a lot of the dialogues that happened in the game after characters were eliminated. I don't want to spoil it for anybody that hasn't seen it, but I'll say that there were a lot of clever narrative hacks that allowed them to quickly rewrite dialogues for when eliminated characters would get back together and be part of the dialogue again. Does that answer your question?
Right, thank you. So we do still have time for a question.
So I have a question about how this kind of an toolkit could impact the experience and emotional value of games. So for example, I'm pretty sure like people would remember the first time they ran Molten Core in World of Warcraft or finished Mass Effect for the first time, and this is something like super memorable and sticks with people for years and maybe even decades. And do you see any ways for this kind of an interface for people to also get that kind of cathartic experience?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of the best examples of this are in sort of persistent worlds. I think that what we're trying to do here, and there's a very interesting statistic by Matt Ball, who's one of our advisors, who says the average American, and I realize I'm probably the only American here, but the average American spends 5 hours engaging in media a day, only 1 hour of which is interactive games or something like this. That's 4 hours of them watching television. So if you can somehow bring that gaming experience to people that are just watching television or people that just want to have a very light touch on it, you can really expand that audience. And if you can get them to have a very memorable experience in this whole thing, that's amazing. And so what we're doing, at least with Rival Peak, was we're giving people the opportunity to watch it as much as they want, but at the same time we have that weekly wrap-up show. And it's trying to keep people sticky, because it's the kind of thing that, as people have told me, that like if you just jump into it for a little bit, you don't really feel like you're involved and you haven't committed to it. But if you commit to it and you're going every day and you're really beginning to root for one of the characters or players if it's another type of game, then you're really building the fandom that we're looking to have. And we feel that the approach to that is multifold, be it through wrap-up shows or be it through direct engagement with the online persistent world, where it's not going to be thrilling and exciting and people cutting people up, but it's going to be a lot of people walking around. It could be pretty boring. But at the same time, we could track analytics and we could understand how things are going and how people reacted to events in the past. And we might be able to know that in our narrative line, there's going to be something that's coming up in the future. And we can send notifications out to people that say, hey, there's going to be something that we think you're going to be interested in this experience. Come on back. And re-engage them through this way. I hope that answers the question.
All right. Thank you so much. That will be it for questions. Please do stay on the stage for just a moment.
Okay. I will point out that I do have a desk demo station in the demo area, so if people want to come and look at demos or just talk to me about some of this stuff, please feel free to stop by.
Right. Thank you so much. And
you.
a round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, after 5 minutes, we will have the next talk. So, a quick break, bathroom break, a water break, and then see you right back. 5 minutes.